Welcome. I have a little record light.
Mine's spinning. It has. There we go. Let's begin.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. So, welcome to February. Probably there's some notable things to discuss down in the agenda, but maybe before we get there, usual announcements, highlights, or PRs people want to discuss. I have not particularly gotten any announcements together, so I got nothing. And anything anyone wants to bring up since last week? Okay, moving on.
I didn't add this yet, but did anyone have any afterthoughts from the Osquery at Scale conference?
I put that down at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to it last.
It seems like a proper agenda, not just a project changes kind of thing.
Yes.
So next standing agenda item is kind of PRs people want to bring up. And I think we actually have one because I see Jonathan here.
Yeah, should I just take it from here?
Yeah, why not? Tell us about your PR. PR 6223.
Yeah, so I was working on something internally for us. We were trying to move from snapshots to diffs. And I realized that the counter on the diffs is actually number of executions and not like the number of results that Osquery is actually sending back to the server. When you're working with a file system logger, it's probably not a big deal. But when you're working with something like a TLS logger, you can actually drop stuff, and then it becomes very difficult to understand where that result fits in with the rest of them. So I PR'd a small change that basically like only increments counters when results are actually sent back to or logged. Let's not even say sent back, just logged in general, whether that be a file logger or like, logged via TLS. And the idea is that the number of executions in that context doesn't really make much sense, especially when you're trying to rebuild state at a point in time. And I was just kind of like want to get some ideas on whether or not this would break, existing use cases. It seems like it wouldn't. When I was researching the code a little bit, it seems like everybody was using this counter just to throw away initial results. So I hope it doesn't cause too much what the heck kind of like moments for people, but I just want to get everybody's comments or concerns on it.
I'm just looking at it for the first time, but at a glance, it seems to me that if the counter's a monotonically increasing integer, that it's unlikely to break the use cases of other folks. But I'm definitely curious to hear what others think.
I mean, if I was brainstorming, I would say that someone might be tracking query executions using that counter, but that information is exposed to the Osquery performance table, whatever the Osquery schedule. Thank you.
Yeah.
Schedule, yeah.
So the information is still there if you did need to know the number of executions and not just how many times new results are there. And the other thing is, if we wanted to be really safe about this, the counter could remain the execution counter, and we could add a new field.
Yeah, so that's something I thought of too. I just wasn't sure. I wanted to get some ideas. Is it what do you guys feel is best practice? Do we leave something there, or is it cool to change it and possibly break things? That's what I was hoping to get some ideas on in the PR at least. But I'm cool with moving it to another field if it makes more sense or it makes people more comfortable about the change.
I think adding a new field is safer. I don't, off the top of my head, know anybody who uses this, but we're likely to discover that. I mean, yeah, it's anybody's guess whether somebody's using this or not. And I do remember running into this a bunch when I was at Collide and we were looking into the behavior of differential queries and all that. And yeah. It's something like it's something somebody somewhere is probably. Okay. Sorry, Zach. I'm just saying that we are likely to break somebody without knowing, and if we add an extra field, it gives us the same guarantees without having to worry about that.
My gut sense is that I would rather not have extra fields, but I see Seshu here, so I'd love to hear from Seshu.
Yeah, I was going to chime in. We use the counter field, but only whether it is 0 or not 0. So that's our use case. But yeah, so I haven't looked at the PR, so I'm not exactly sure what the change is. For most purposes, we treat that as a Boolean outcome.
I'm generally in favor of having less code, especially if it feels less confusing all at all. So I would rather we just redefine counter to be the number of results generated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely see where Victor's coming from with the safety argument, but it seems likely to me that it actually won't break anyone's stuff, and if it does, I think it will be too hard to fix it for them. And I would like to avoid seeing the number of fields and log messages just growing when it's perhaps not necessary. Maybe anyone who cares about this can follow up offline on the PR.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I mean, I'm kind of deferring to you guys. I have less of a dog in the fight here, so I'll go with what recommendations are.
Sorry, I'm just catching up in note taking.
Well, I'll just throw it out there. I've got a PR 6211 that adds a community ID hash function in SQLite. I don't think it's really controversial, but it just needs some code review, and I think it's pretty cool, actually. This was something that Josh Brower and Security Onion folks worked with me on doing, but it will enable correlating network connections between like the process open sockets table on Osquery with network traffic recorded by tools like Bro and Zeek that can also generate those hashes. So it's kind of cool. But if anyone wants to just review a little non-controversial PR, that'd be awesome.
Do you think it makes sense to put this into the listening ports table?
So I don't think it makes sense to put it into any table, because if you add it as a function, then anywhere that you can get the relevant columns, you can plug it into the function. So there are multiple tables where that may be possible, and there are additional tables where it could be added in the future. So that's my perspective on that.
I meant to have a look at it, but turned out I didn't have as much time as I wanted. So yeah, I will try to do it tomorrow, maybe.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Any other PRs people want to toss out there?
I'd like to ask my team. We have some PRs that are open. Are there any that are blocked on a review?
Well, yeah, there is the Linux container. Container access from tables on Linux, which implements, it is PR 6209. So the objective there is to implement container access like Docker, LXC, etc., but using the underlying namespace. So this works with any container technology that uses namespaces, Linux user namespaces or mount namespaces, and gives access to this container. And it's easy to implement on tables. You just need to add a few lines. And if the tables is using the logging from glog, you have to use another kind of logger, because what happens is that the code, instead of running in the worker, a new process will be created so that it can switch inside the container namespace, and then it will transfer back the communication, the data. Sorry, it will transfer back the data through a communication channel to the worker. So in general, I've seen to the table I've implemented the file table, the hash table, and the packages table, and the OS version table. There wasn't much logging, so it was pretty safe. Anyway, yeah, it's maybe a big PR if you want, but it needs. I think it's cool, and it needs review. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really cool one, and it's clever how it's done. I'd like to give it a more thorough review. I had a couple of questions, and thanks for answering those. And yeah, it's a big one. So if other folks are able to come in and take a look at that as well, I mean, I think it's a really cool capability that's being added.
And well, yeah, connected to that, there are other two PRs, but those are simply the implementation of this framework on the OS version and packages tables.
One thing I'll note is I don't think we want to target that for 4.2.0, which we're trying to go to. It's just big enough, so I don't quite know when we're likely to run it. Yeah. Anyone want to raise anything else with PRs? Cool. Okay. A somewhat bigger question. 4.2.0 also. There was a security vulnerability. I don't think we've been very quiet about this one. It's been all over Slack, so maybe people have seen conversation about this. But Osquery does not correctly verify TLS host names for the logging endpoint and potentially others. So there's sort of always been a man-in-the-middle attack there. I think, Zach, you found this has been there since like 2-point-something.
2.10. There was a refactoring of the TLS code to use Beast, I think, if I remember. That happened between 2.9 and 2.10, and the verification of the host names was dropped. So this means that Osquery will happily connect to any server with a valid TLS certificate, regardless of whether that certificate matches the host name that Osquery is trying to connect to. And to be clear, this is mostly only exploitable if the user's not providing a single cert or cert chain for the server that they're connecting to, because in that case, the person would have to have the actual cert. But on Mac and Linux, where the system trust store is used, if you had a cert that was valid for any domain name issued by any of those trusted providers, you may have been able to provide that cert and man in the middle of the connections. So that means that a mitigation also at this point until the code fix is released is to make sure that we're pushing, or make sure that anyone who's deploying Osquery is pushing a specific cert chain for the cert they're using on their server.
So the discussion we've had on Slack about this is that it generally sounds like we want to try and cut 4.2.0 as a fix for this, sort of as soon as that's all in and stable, which, might be as early as this week. There are some bugs open in the 4.2.0 milestone, which kind of as soon as they all close, we can push this. What's going on? I think probably Alessandro is probably the best one to speak to the state of the fixes for this.
The verification for the hostname.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was replying on Slack. Yeah, so I only have to rebase it on the pull request made by Teddy, which cleans up initialization in the HTTP classes. And then we can push it.
And Stefano, you merged in the TLS tests, right? So we should actually have a reasonably high confidence.
Yeah, though.
I don't think this was tested.
Actually, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this was tested. This specific thing that broke.
But I think you have updated your fix, the PR that contains the fix for this issue.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of tests now fail because because the tests are in. Though I'm not 100% sure there's a test specific for the hostname, or but because I was working on we had those tests in the past. I was restoring them. And I know that Nick was talking about, I don't want to say that Nick will do it, but Nick was talking about adding some tests after that base framework was in. So yeah, we need to talk with him maybe probably and do a more specific test so that we can. I mean,
sorry.
The tests now are catching it, but yeah, probably a specific test will be better.
Sorry, what I mean is we have tests that will help ensure we don't break the existing TLS endpoints, even if we're not testing this particular failure case.
Yeah.
And sorry, as I review this, I think this is blocked on the refactoring in 6.0.4.4.
Yeah, that one. That's the one I was looking at right now.
Uh-huh. Okay, so Alessandro, are you kind of on top of 6.0.4.4 and 6.167? 6.197, excuse me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, 6.0.4.4 seems already.
6.0.4.4 was primarily waiting for tests so that we were confident we could merge that. Nick's not here, unless I just don't see him somewhere. He's probably not here. But it looks like 6.0.4.4 has been rebased onto the tests and is running. That look right to people?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe we should review it and merge it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was already reviewed and approved. but we lost approval when we rebased.
Mm-hmm.
We can probably
so
merge
too.
it soon.
Well, yeah, maybe someone a little closer to the C++ side can give this a once-over and thumb it. Zach, Alessandro, Stefano, y'all are all probably good candidates. And we can do 6197. And then we can try and figure out how to cut a release without Teddy. It'll be fun. Does anyone want to argue that we don't need to cut a release? Say anything else about this? Have any questions?
I think Nick mentioned that it's not an issue for Teddy to show up just to do a release. It should be pretty straightforward. And I mean, why not? Once we fix the CV issue, we can easily make a new release.
Okay, well, sounds like no one else wants to talk about 4.2.0. Oh, also, huge thanks to Tim, who raised this issue, who probably isn't here. But he pinged me on Slack and was like, hey, so I found this thing. And then I kind of threw a bunch of other people at it. So that was really cool. Some random person pinged us about this. So it was pretty awesome. So yeah, huge shout outs to Tim for that. Next thing we have here is BPF integration, which is, I think, Alessandro.
Yeah, we have started integrating our BPF work into Osquery. We do not have a pull request ready yet, as we are refactoring a bunch of things first. But yeah, we have made a table to trace readline invocations, which is a library used by Bash and other programs to present a shell-like output to the user. And this table can be used to trace any kind of interaction with Bash system-wide. We also have a small demo linked in the notes if you want to take a look at it.
I think
here.
We talked about replacing the existing BPF implementation with this at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really clash with the new implementation. We were just wondering if it was worth to, refactor and better implement what the old BPF code was attempting to do. Which I'm going by memory, but I think it was attempting to trace the set ID and maybe the kill system calls.
Prior conversation, I think in the last office hours from Nick, was that he didn't think anyone inside Facebook was using the BPF code.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that wrote it, and it doesn't look like it ever really got adoption. So I'm always in favor of having less code. So if there's wins around merging or replacing it or removing it, then implicitly I'm in favor.
Yeah, sure. We can probably open a pull request that drops the code and then ask for feedback.
Oh, I'm excited to see new and exciting BPF things show up.
Yeah, we have plans on implementing additional stuff like process events, but we want to start small initially. And yeah, there are some things we would like to implement, like tracking which kernel modules gets loaded, not just by file, but from file descriptors or memory. And yeah, DNS events without using. We will have an extension to detect DNS requests by capturing network traffic. But it would be nice to also have a more lightweight solution by tracing the system calls, the libc functions. And yeah, the usual like set UID, set JID, and so on.
Cool. So next two items I have are kind of related. I was curious if anyone had any reports from the Osquery at Scale conference they wish to share. No pressure, anyone. And relatedly, I hear Zach announced some things there that maybe Zach would like to share.
I don't know if I announced anything of much significance there, but I can give an overview from my perspective. I would say about 120 people turned out. There were a number of talks. Many of them were very focused around using upticks with Osquery. So I think it definitely leaves ripe space for there to continue being a conference that's focused on open source Osquery. We learned that upticks has done some cool stuff with Osquery that's not made it back up to upstream, and Mike and I connected with the upticks folks, and it sounds like we'll be getting them back involved again. I mean, I see we have Seshu here on the call, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could start small. Like, is there a pull request yet that upticks would like to point to and have discussed?
Yeah, so we still unfortunately have the old file structure and things like that. I need to figure out either we pull changes from upstream and then start making PRs, or making PRs upstream, and not sure yet. I'll also talked internally about cleaning up some of those in PRs and either closing them or fixing whatever pending comments are there. So pretty soon I think we'll have some activity.
I feel like if you try to rebase on all the changes, that'll be a big bite to try to chew. If you were to maybe cherry pick some commits, we could work them into the tree somehow.
Yeah, it's still looking into the diffs.
Like if you start a new branch, just call it like feature X or whatever, and then try to pick off one of the changes you made, just whatever the smallest one is. We'll just take them one at a time. I think that feels easier than you guys getting up to 4.2 or whatever, and then trying to merge back.
Yeah, I'll update you soon. Probably post something in this channel. Still trying to figure out. Also get an inventory of the PRs and everything else, and whether they are like isolated or intertwined with some other stuff. So we are gathering the details.
Is the fork based on version 3?
Yeah, this is based on version 3. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, otherwise from the conference, like, people love Osquery, more larger companies are using it, and we'll look forward to seeing the videos that the upticks folks post hopefully soon. I think they said it would be a few weeks to get them together, but I'm sure that folks in this call will be interested in just seeing who's using Osquery and how.
Yeah, once I get the videos, I think they were doing editing or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, it shouldn't be more than a week or two. I'll post the links in the channel. Yeah, we definitely also had a lot of folks outside of upticks, like generally using Osquery and Collide and Fleet, the open source version, show up at the conference. So it was very interesting to learn their use cases and see what they were doing.
And anyone else want to speak about their experiences there?
Well, I was there, but I think Zach summarized kind of the important parts. The relevant to us is that we just spoke to upticks, and that everyone's goal is to sync up those two forks. We just are looking for how we can help, and everyone wants the same thing, so let's work together. I guess that's all I have.
Okay, well, cool. Thanks for running the conference. I know it's a lot of work. The only other thing someone put here was Zach's work about Osquery in a box. I don't know if someone wants to tout that. Zach wants to talk about it.
Well, I think
it's cool.
Oh yeah, thanks Alessandro. So yeah, it's just like a little collection of configs that makes it really easy to sort of spin up the more full Osquery ecosystem. So you've got a fleet manager, which is fleet. You've got a logging pipeline, which is the elk stack, and you've got containerized Osquery hosts. So hopefully it just helps some more folks who are getting into Osquery, or even folks like us who want to just do kind of experiments in a fresh environment to do those things. So thanks for liking it, Alessandro.
I don't know if it's interesting to you, Zach. One of the things that actually Grub and I did now some time ago, back when he was still at Collide, is there's a fork of Launcher that will produce fake serial numbers, so you can run it inside Docker. So there are some they're Docker containers that I push when I cut Launcher releases, suitable for like testing Launcher stuff. So if you want to throw that on,
yeah, totally.
They may or may not need some work.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's sync up online. I mean, I'd love to, expand on the concept of making it easy to set up tests and dev environments for the whole ecosystem. Because I think that, as we all know, Osquery is just really a piece of the puzzle, and helping people to at least see what a very rudimentary version of the whole thing is can be really helpful, I think.
I also have a small extension that prints the logs that Osquery outputs to standard out, which I've been using a lot when I'm debugging things. Like, it's very helpful for that. So I'll see if I can PR it as maybe just as an example of a logging plugin, and also, yeah, like trying to read Osquery logs as they're being printed to a file or something and tailing that is kind of painful. So this is just a little step that simplifies it. And it's literally like a 10-line logging plugin.
PRs happily accepted.
Great.
Does anyone else have something they'd like to bring up? Okay, well, if not, so concludes another week's office hours. Thank you all for your time. Wonderful to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing, Seth.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye.
Hey, bye.
Bye.